Whenever you are ready.
So,
Go for it.
oh, okay. Hi, everybody. So my name is Matt Slasky, and this semester, the project I mainly focused on was in the quantitative blockchain compliance. Um, yeah. So just as a quick outline to what we're kind of just going to go over, the way I kind of saw this kind of general journey for me throughout the semester was mainly split into three parts. And that was just generally understanding the overview of the cryptocurrency space, understanding the mathematics that went into it, and just understanding what I was going to be doing throughout the project so I can familiarize myself. Second was to now, how do I integrate that into the coding path of what I will have to do throughout the project? And there I'll go to talk about the different coding things I did. And then the third thing was the business model that I helped create, because at the start of how this project was that it was just simply just a bunch of algorithms being turned into a product, and I slowly grew that into a business model. So first, I'm going to go into introduction overview. So the main idea of first was to understand what the goal of the project was, as you can see, was the idea to detect market manipulation in the cryptocurrency space, and that was through the use of mathematical means. Now, the reason this was really important to me, and these three reasons are shown on the screen, is why I became interested in this project in the first place. The first of which was that I already knew that cryptocurrency was revolutionizing financial landscape, and across a variety of my internships in finance, I realized this could be something to know in the future. Second off was that the blockchain transactions have been creating challenges in fraud detection and compliance. I thought that was rather interesting and something that I could address. And the third was that I'm actually using mathematical principles and stuff that I've learned throughout my time at Lehigh in classes like probability or whatever, that I can actually use that towards a project. So I thought that was really interesting. And there's three reasons I joined the project. So first, to understand what were the three services or algorithms that were offered. Um, that was the main thing that we kind of Akshat, my teammate, kind of developed, and I learned to understand what that was: the price history analysis, on-chain data analysis, and pretty much the use of binary classifiers and rolling metrics for fraud detection. So throughout each of them essentially led to its own service that we were going to offer on the product. Each of them would translate into using a variety of mathematical skills, as well as code, to understand what were we actually going to be giving out. And that was the crypto abuse metric service, a wallet report detection, and a wallet background check. Now, the biggest thing was I needed to understand the mathematical models that were used. That was things like the Heston volatility model, and how I used kind of both geometric Brownian and Ornstein-Uhlenbeck to kind of measure a price and volatility for the model that we were creating, and how each of these three metrics that we would eventually test in our rolling metrics section, we were kappa, theta, and chi, each of them would tell us a completely different number about our cryptocurrency transactions. I'm not going to go into that in detail now because it's a shorter presentation, but essentially I'm just going over what we did, and these mathematical concepts were really important to understanding the code later on. So next, I kind of going to go into what I did in the coding aspect of the project. The first of which was that Akshat explained that we mainly wanted to be using VS Code for Python scripts, as well as the idea of Neo4j as a graphing database to kind of show off what we were doing throughout the project. And so what I did was using a lot of the functions that were predefined initially that kind of Akshat and they developed and sent to me. I then actually used it to connect to the Neo4j database, assigned a driver, and then began a kind of creation of dummy wallets and transactions. There, I kind of created unique wallet addresses and created a for loop that would eventually list all my transactions and how they were connected. And then I actually tagged the sample wallet, and then ended up running the code in Neo4j. And this is what was shown to me. As you can see, that there were these five wallets that I actually created, each with unique information and transactions that I labeled as dummy variables. And then I also marked one of the wallets wallet one. And as you can tell, this is the one that is marked on the screen. So I knew I was kind of using all these kinds of code, and it was actually working out for Neo4j. The second was kind of the use of the integration with real world API. I knew that now that I've worked with dummy variables, I need to actually start implementing it with real world data. So the first site I actually looked through was using Coin API. And here I got through some help to understand how APIs worked. I learned what API key was. I had to go through API documentation and found the API code. And I ended up trying to integrate it with now having a replaced API key and wallet address into a newer code to actually run what was kind of being like shown to me again on Neo4j to kind of create a new set of analyzing wallets. But what I didn't expect was that Coin API didn't support wallet transactions, so I ended up having to switch to block cipher. And it did eventually work after a few, finical stuff I had to do to the code, but it's always good to kind of show me a variety of branching paths, which is what I wanted. Finally, the last thing that I really focused on was the creation of a new wallet scoring feature. The goal of this was, okay, how can I build this project more from like, okay, now that I have APIs and can able to build something, now how can I actually add something new to this project that I want to start working on in the future now that I've understood it? And that was to create a scoring algorithm to provide kind of a new measure of risk. And I did that with calculating a risk score for interactions on tagged wallets, sudden spikes in activity, and connections to blacklisted wallets. Now, this isn't something that ended up being fully built out and something that needs to be refined, but it was a good starting point for where I kind of want this future to be and maybe where I want to work on next semester. And finally, the last thing is the business plan and path forward. First of which, I know a lot of these slides are going to look familiar to anyone who was at the Quant conference. Now it's because they were my slides going into talking about the business model. First of which was in order to understand the business model, I had to know which customers we were going to first kind of go and put our product forward and deliver our services, and that was institutional and individual investors, compliance firms, and governmental bodies. Then I had to learn to understand how our cash flow model worked, and that was mainly for people paying for APIs and our consulting services of using the services that we mentioned at the start, as well as the different cash outflows that were going to consist with this, which was our use of external APIs and cloud hosting platform. But at the end of the day, all this kind of led to why is this project and this product going to be so important in the future? And that was this idea of autonomous implementation, this novel use of mathematical models, which is what I was interested in off the start, and the fact that we offered a variety of products, as we mentioned before, each with a variety of algorithms to a variety of customers. And now I can kind of discuss where I see this project going forward. First is we kind of expand our analysis more into different chains. We've only been really using blockchain. So going into Ethereum or various others like that could be a good way to kind of keep going forward. Second is the integration of new features. I talked about this with the wallet scoring initially that I was starting to create, but it's a good way to kind of keep innovating and making this even more research focused as a project that we can build more off it. And third is there our expansion into more API and newer customer avenues. As we have said, this is kind of in the infancy right now. So developing into, what can we learn from more APIs or more customers, our project can slowly expand. And yeah, thank you everyone. That was my project in crypto.